Zhang Aiping introduced you to this guy, correct?
And that is General Wu Shaozu. And he was introduced by the defense minister. At the time, he was the political commissar of the Commission of Science, Technology, and Industry for National Defense, which is the early days of what we would call the defense industrial base here. But General Wu, again, introduced to me by the defense minister, became a very important person that I had many interactions with in the context of our official developing relationship.
Okay. And then later he became Minister of Sport, which is where
That was in the 90s, yes.
in
Mhm.
the 90s, which is where Health Masters becomes relevant. All right. So that was
I believe you'll show that picture later.
so let's see. Any other comment on these pictures before we move on?
No, this is all in 1980s, and I was very. In fact, I just discussed this today with somebody that deep knowledge, and we were talking about his son who's in China right now. He's 19 years old, goes to Columbia, and he's spending his summer in China, and he just can't believe how incredibly developed and automated overall China is, and he's been several places.
Hmm.
And then my friend said to me, you're lucky, meaning me, because you've seen the whole process over 45 years from coal-fired steam engines for
Yeah.
railroads
Yep.
and donkey carts carrying cabbage to today. And yeah, that's true. That's what has happened in 45 years is historically incredible.
Certainly is. Especially if you rode the trains in the 80s. That was, which I did. I rode the
And you
trains
ride the
quite a bit.
trains now. I went to New York earlier this week, and just taking the train to New York is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Uh, in China, it's not the case. It's very smooth, very fast, and efficient.
Well, and we were discussing Western attitudes, people who were living there at the time and how contemptuous they were of the Chinese. They're having the last laugh now. Um, all right, so let's move on here. All right, so when you come back to the U.S., if you'd comment, please, I'm going to highlight, expand these images one at a time.
Yeah.
So here you came back and you became an advisor to Bill
Yeah,
Clinton.
this picture has nothing to do with China, but it has to do with my position at the time with the with NATO, and that's Secretary of Defense William Perry and President Clinton, and we were working a special operation at the time, and I was involved at that level.
NATO, you were chief exec to NATO, weren't you?
Executive assistant to the
Executive
Supreme
assistant.
Commander. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So, but I kind of would like to go over you also, didn't you command the Seventh Fleet,
No, no, no.
in
I
the
was
Gulf
the
War?
Chief of Intelligence of the Seventh Fleet.
Okay. All right. And you've had
Commander
a
of the
number.
Seventh Fleet's a three-star admiral. That
Okay.
wasn't me.
All right. Um, but didn't you command an aircraft carrier at one point
No,
briefly?
I was an intelligence officer on an aircraft carrier.
Okay. All right. I don't want to misrepresent here. All right.
No,
So
don't represent that's not for sure.
so you were dealing with Clinton, and your impression of Clinton was that he was a really good talker. I think I remember you telling me
Very
that.
sharp, very smart. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, then, if I get the sequence right, and I want to blow this up a
So
little bit.
I'll just say in 1995, I decided with the rank of captain to retire from the U.S. Navy. And at that point, Mr. Andrew Marshall, who is the creator of the process of net assessment and the director of the Office of Net Assessment since 1972 in the Pentagon. And so this is a picture probably around 2017 or so. But Mr. Marshall asked me through contract to be an advisor directly to him about that assessment of China. So I did that from 1997 to 2017, so 20 years. And so Mr. Marshall is quite a historic figure, actually. But I had a very direct one-on-one uh, engagement with him for 20 years, from which I learned a lot about, especially the process of net assessment.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did he not introduce you to Samuel Huntington?
No, actually, the Navy sent me to Harvard, and I studied under Samuel Huntington.
Was that,
And Professor Huntington introduced me to Andy Marshall. So it's the other way around.
oh, so it's the other way around.
And that would have been in 1989.
Okay. So you had come back and then you went to Harvard and
From China, I went to Harvard. Yes,
then you went to Johns Hopkins for your
that was
for,
before. That was before that
for international politics or something like that.
at the School of Advanced International Studies at
Yeah.
Hopkins. Yes, but that was before Harvard.
Okay. So just giving the audience an idea of how profoundly Phil, I won't say occupied is the best way of occupied a very an important position in the U.S. government, in the military, and in intel with respect to China. Now, where did Japan come into the picture? Because you're also an expert on Japan.
Um, well, again, that was during the Navy because I've lived in Japan twice while I was in the Navy, and through that, and then again, my I was the chief of staff for intelligence at the Seventh Fleet, so I met very high level people within the Japanese establishment and government that led to very special relationships up to this day.
And
I go
I
to
just
Japan. I go to China and Japan 4 or 5 times a year. In fact, I'll be going there in a couple of weeks.
Well, just to comment, because we don't really have any slides up about Japan from what I've seen, and just talking to you, you have an immense knowledge of Japanese history, Japanese culture, and particularly of the the long-standing importance of the Japanese emperor to Japanese culture, and the contrast between that situation in Japan and what we have in China today. And you have emphasized to me that there is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, envy on the Chinese side. They covet that tradition that they lost and that the Japanese have maintained, even though they were incinerated, I mean, really defeated by us. They still held on to their ancient roots. Would you say that I don't know how to put that, whether it's a thorn
Well, this
in
goes back 1,500 years. This goes back 1,500 years when during the Tang Dynasty, the Japanese went and studied at the capital of the Tang Dynasty, which was called um, Chang'an and Chang'an, and which is now the city of Xi'an. But it was quite the academic melting pot at the time, and that included Japanese scholars who then took uh, concept of the Tao and Buddhism back to Japan.
so they
But then
extracted.
there are historical factors of that the separation after that, much of which had to do with the Mongolian invasion
Hmm.
uh, of China. Um, but and these are long historical discussions. But so there is a very deep understanding both ways of China and Japan, which is complicated to this day.
So just to put it crudely, the Mongol invasion essentially contaminated the purity of the Chinese system from the point of view of the Japanese. The Japanese left with the pure stuff, took it back, extracted this pure Taoist and Buddhist knowledge, took it back to Japan, where it remained untouched by the Mongols anyway. Um,
Basically said when you could come to that assessment. Yes.
okay. So anyway, this and under Mr. Marshall, you were tasked not only with bringing intel from China and understanding of
No,
China, which is,
let's not use the word intel. This is not intel. Net
or
assessment
I'm
is
sorry,
not intelligence. Net assessment is baseline understanding, the great majority of which is open source.
okay.
This is
So
not some intelligence operation. No,
so it involves
I
deep
just want to
study.
correct you on that because it's not.
Yeah, yeah,
Many
I
people make
understand.
that assumption. It's not correct.
I
Yeah,
understand. So it's deep
yeah.
understanding, which is more learned and experiential than spooky 007 stuff. That's we're not
It's
talking about
absolutely
that.
not spooky stuff.
Yeah,
It's it's the senses: smell, see, feel, touch.
yeah. So that's one reason why you were drawn to my operation, but you were, I think, tasked, and I'm just switching over here in general with finding
Well,
out and talking.
this is of that time frame, and Alvin and Heidi Toffler, who lived out in LA at the time. I was encouraged to go out and talk to him because he himself was like an Andrew Marshall and Samuel Huntington, really looking at the future.